Hello everyone and welcome to Leoron TV channel. My name is Drena and I will be your host for today's episode. Our newest guest is our expert trainer in the field of soft skills, Dr. Eric Albertini, who will join us to discuss the topic of creating clarity. As an experienced trainer and coach, Dr. Eric has been supporting clients in the area of leadership management, change management, and business consulting for over 25 years now, and he is delivering soft skills courses for Leoron PDI. Dr. Eric, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you in our show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
In times of change, people tend to fail. All of us get a bit less focused, a bit more distracted, and find it harder to set and keep priorities. In your experience, why is creating clarity more important now than before?
Well, Rena, I think it's got to do with the way the world of work is moving. People are experiencing a world of work that is volatile. It's changing all the time. With that change comes a huge amount of uncertainty. So we've got a fast changing world full of uncertainty. It is very complex. It's complicated and complex, and it's ambiguous. There are many contradictions. There are many ambiguities. And people in that world feel threatened. They feel anxious. With all that confusion and lack of clarity and ambiguity, they crave clarity. And in a world that's moving in that VUCA way, as we call it, this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, clarity is critical. In the absence of clarity, people feel threatened and anxious.
One of the most common failures of leaders is not providing clarity for the people around them. How does the lack of clarity manifest itself in the workplace, and how we can prevent it?
When leaders don't provide clarity, and it reminds me of a quote Napoleon Bonaparte said, one of his famous quotes. He said, "Leaders are dealers in hope." So leaders are expected to give their people hope. They are dealers in hope. And when a leader doesn't provide clarity, the people, the followers, feel threatened. They feel anxious. We must remember that the human brain requires certainty. There's a neuroscience component that makes creating clarity important. So our brain is a predictor machine. It likes prediction, it likes certainty, and it likes to know with certainty what's going on. When leaders don't provide it, the individual team members, the followers, feel a state of internal dissonance. They feel disconnected, they feel disengaged, they feel threatened. When the brain is faced with too much uncertainty, it takes that uncertainty and it says, this uncertainty is a threat to my existence. That threat then creates fear. So the moment you have uncertainty, fear, it creates a massive amount of anxiety in people. So when leaders don't provide clarity, especially in times where things are very uncertain, very ambiguous, very volatile, complex, when leaders don't provide that clarity, you have a workforce that is anxious, way too high levels of anxiety. You have a workforce which feels threatened, which feels a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and then we have the manifestations of lack of clarity in the business.
What does creating clarity entail?
Creating clarity has two components. There are two parts to creating clarity. The first is what we call visioning. Leaders have to see through the contradictions and the chaos, and they have to be able to see a vision, a future vision, and then enthusiastically they have to communicate that vision to their followers. So the first part of creating clarity is what we call visioning. It's the ability to see through the mess and through the contradictions and through the ambiguity to a very clearly defined future state, and then the ability to communicate that. That's the first part of creating clarity. The second part of creating clarity has to do with what we call mobilizing. This is about making sure that the followers are absolutely engaged, that they are enabled, and that they are empowered. So mobilizing has to do with rallying support. It has to do with creating a space within the organization where everybody knows what their place is, how they can contribute to the vision, that they feel engaged, that they feel a sense of connectedness or belonging to that vision, that they are empowered and enabled to move towards that vision. So two components that leaders need to get right to create clarity, that of visioning and that of mobilizing.
And what are the dimensions of creating clarity?
So under each of those, so visioning, and I just want to be clear about this, visioning is not necessarily creating the vision. It could be that the vision has been created by the top leadership in an organization. But the dimension of visioning is the inspiration and enthusiastically communicating that vision. It's allowing the individuals to find purpose in that vision. So leaders have to take that vision. They may have created it. They may have had a part in shaping that vision. But even if they haven't, it's important that they take that vision and they help their followers connect with purpose to that vision. So that's a dimension that sits under visioning. On the mobilizing, it is absolutely important. As human beings, we need to understand what our contribution is to something. It's a basic anthropological human need. We need to understand that we make a difference and humankind wants to contribute to something. So a dimension of mobilizing is leaders need to show their followers, this is your contribution, this is how it fits into the vision, this is how you, at an individual level with purpose, can help us achieve this vision. So the dimensions are around inspiration and communicating effectively the vision, and then connecting that vision at an individual level to the purpose and values of the individual. And then you have an energized, mobilized workforce in pursuit of that vision. Now, in the absence of visioning and mobilizing, you have a workforce that is not clear about where they're going, they're not clear about why they go in there, and they're not clear about how they contribute to getting to that place, because there is no clearly defined vision.
And what are the key steps to achieving clarity?
So from a leader perspective, one of the biggest challenges and one of the reasons very often why leaders fail to create clarity is because they themselves are not clear on what matters most to them at a personal level, never mind at an organizational level. So one of the critical steps is for leaders to find their purpose. They must understand what matters most to them. They must connect, we call it connect to core. They must understand what matters most to them. Self-awareness is another critical dimension of creating clarity. Leaders must be very self-aware of what they can do, what they can't do, their behavioral preferences and their behavioral areas of avoidance. They must understand what it is that they can and can't do, what they should and shouldn't do in order to drive this clarity forward. So it's about finding purpose. It's about finding what matters most. It's about self-awareness and self-insight. A big part of creating humility is what we call connectedness. Leaders need to connect. Now, connect does not mean communicate. Connectedness is about forming meaningful, purposeful relationships with others. And connectedness is also about connecting to self. So our experience has shown that leaders who are good at creating clarity, leaders who are good at driving a vision and mobilizing their people, they know themselves well. They are connected to self. So for us, one of the critical steps to clarity, or creating clarity, is connectedness. And that means connect first to self and then connect to others. And connectedness we define as forming a meaningful, purposeful, intentional relationships with others. The last dimension to create this clarity is authenticity. People will be reluctant to follow someone who they do not believe is authentic. So we do a lot of work with leaders around being an authentic leader, because it's through this authenticity that leaders build trust. They build a sense of hope in their followers, and then followers will follow them to that vision that they are articulating. So those are the key pillars of creating clarity.
Thank you, Eric, for the great discussion. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of today's episode, and we hope you will make good use of the advices given by Eric. Make sure to watch our recordings on our Vimeo and YouTube channels, and if there are other topics that you want us to discuss with our experts, do let us know and we will try to cover them on our next episodes. Until next time, stay tuned.